Thank you for that lovely introduction. Hi, guys. I am Carla Gericke, and I'm delighted to be here. I believe this is my 19th Pork Fest. So let's start with this. Who here is here for the first time? Okay, that fills my heart. And when we're done here, I would love it if you feel moved, perhaps, to come get one of these potential mover little flags from me and put them at your campground. That'll help people in the community know that we should go talk to you to see maybe what your concerns are and really try and figure out what it will take to make you come join us to build the future. So, as was mentioned, I do a lot of talking and traveling and speaking about ideas, and I had the honor and privilege to go to Acapulco this year. It's an event down in Mexico that is more anarchist focused, I think, than primarily what we're doing here in the Free State. But it is interesting to watch these different pockets of light developing across the world. And so one of the things that happened at Acapulco that I thought, oh, that's a cool idea, I think I'll steal it and come do it here, was Catherine Bleish, who will be speaking here tomorrow. I believe we're doing a panel at noon up in the 101 classroom. And she's been working on Acapulco for maybe the past 2 or 3 years. And she was someone who came from Missouri way back in the day, was kind of looking at would she move to New Hampshire. There were family reasons. She got married, she had kids. It wasn't going to work for her at that stage in her life. Anyway, long story short, we kind of kept in contact in the way you do with social media, but not really super tight. And then she reached out, said, hey, we're doing Acapulco. We had in Mexico, they actually had a Category 5 direct hit hurricane on the town last November. It was, and so I don't want to say we're struggling, but obviously there was a lot of hurricane damage. I was deeply shocked, actually, when I saw what it looked like there. We're talking, the old huge hotels and resorts, just roofs ripped off, windows out, air conditioning ducts hanging out, remarkably intense damage. And they had some beautiful stories to tell about how they tried to mitigate some things there. And it was really beautiful to watch them mirroring many of the things that we have been doing and that we have found success with here in the Free State Project over the years. So in response to their mirroring, I would like to mirror back to them that Catherine started Acapulco with setting a tone and a vibe and a sort of intention, I guess, for the week. And so people who know me know I love freedom, but I also like personal responsibility. And what we're navigating as free people here at PorcFest and really in life in general is figuring out what that balance is, right? The more freedom you want to have, the more personal responsibility you have to accept. Right? It has to come from you. It has to come from inside you. It comes from that place of self-ownership. So she talked about the 4 agreements. Is anyone here familiar? I see a couple of hands at the back there. All right, so these are just basically 4 agreements. I can't honestly even remember the name of the guy who wrote it. I will look that up for next time. But just, anyone would yell out one of them. Anyone? Nothing is personal. All right, that is a great one because that is so hard for us because we are individualists. And frankly, everything in life is personal. But the thinking there is just to say, don't take it personally if you're in a situation. So that's one of them. Another one is to be impeccable with your word. And that is a great one because that actually is the energy exchange of, hey, you can trust me because what I say is true to you. And then in a reciprocal fashion, we actually expect the other person to be dealing with us as well with that sort of notion, right? So if you're impeccable with your word and the person you're talking to is impeccable with their word, we can have a voluntarist society because then people are speaking the truth to each other and we're trying to get to a place of understanding. The third one in the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions. And this one, I don't know about you guys, but that's hard, right? Because we're always bringing our own stories, our own baggage, our own narratives to whatever is being experienced. So really this week, as you navigate this new and free life here at PorcFest, and I hope you have a wonderful experience, remember that. You know, I think if we all lead here and kind of spend our time on the campground thinking and acting with curiosity, that could, you know, just really open up the world. People who know me know I love to talk. And so my intention that I let's redo that one. My intention that I set for this week is to try and listen more. So please, everyone, sometime this week, come find me. Tell me your story. Tell me why you're interested in the Free State Project. Tell me, you know, what you like about where you live, what you would be seeking when you come here. And part of that is really to try and instill in your minds, I don't like the height of this. Okay, that seems better. I don't know, okay. Instill in your mind sort of a path to making it here to the Free State. And then the 4th one of the agreements is always do your best. And that was a really, really difficult idea for me personally to internalize because I have very high standards for myself. I'm a perfectionist. We all have a story about who we are and how we got to be that way. And sometimes I think we just internally set our expectations so high and at such an intense frequency that, you know, you're actually driving yourself a little mad. So that notion of always do your best is the best you can do under the circumstances. So by way of example, I currently have a blinding headache. And I was like, oh, I'm probably not gonna nail this in the way that I would love to do today. But I'm like, it doesn't matter. Show up, do the best you can do in the situation you're in, and let the chips fall where they may. And the only person who can determine what your best is you. And so I shared a meme earlier this week, and it was treat your mind like it's your child. And it really struck me because I was like, we are so intensely hypercritical, maybe not all of us, but I think many of us. And I think in particular, our kind of people, right? Logical, rational, achieving, self-improvement. The next thing you know, you're like, oh, I gotta, I don't know, fast for 10 days. And you're like, why? So always do your best. The reason I want everyone to, as we go through this conversation today, to really be plotting, but in a positive way, setting goals for what your path here would look like, is for the following reason, which I only learned when I ran for office last time. Someone told me, Democrats chase ballots, Republicans chase votes. I don't know what we libertarians chase. I think it's clout because we don't have anything else. And someone said, but what does that mean? And I said, well, if your mindset is you're trying to get a ballot, that is actually a different energy than if your mindset is I need to get a vote. And even if you're trying to close on that vote, what Democrats were starting to do in various races is they would actually call their lists, and instead of just having a push call, a reminder to, you know, go vote or whatever, their questions were things like, hey, have you made your voting plan for November 5th? Huh? Oh, you haven't. It sounds like you haven't. You know what you should do is immediately open your Google Calendar and write election day on your calendar. Then let's discuss what you need in order to go vote at the polls that day. Do you need a ride? If so, who should you be calling now to get that ride? Do you need a time frame to come? What else might you need to have to show up, right? And I was like, damn it. They have a lot of money and they figured out a hack. So here's my magic trick in life. I have no money or I'm extremely cheap, but I love trying to hack stuff. Like I love going, oh, what is the value? What was the little magic trick there? And then how can we apply it to make things in our own lives better? So the hack I learned there is that we genuinely need to think about the process of how we might move to New Hampshire, but then also openly discuss, what is life like here? How is it? And what it would look like for you. So I had a wonderful introduction, thank you, but just again, by way of background, so I'm a FSP OG, as they say at this time, and then I realized, oh my God, I'm so OG that the Zoomers don't know what OG is. And that was a moment, it hurt. And then I said, old gangster. So I'm an original old gangster. I'm president emeritus of the Free State Project. I also served, as ED, I guess the role that Eric Breaking now fulfills at that time was president from 2011 to 2016. Before that, I organized PorkFest in 2009 and 2010. And actually brought it back here from Gunstock. I also, just as a side note, we'll have a lot of side conversations here today. Last night we were doing PorkFest Jeopardy, and I was like, I have a function, finally, I'm like the ringer, I know all the FSP history. They were like, what movie was shot in 2013 that featured Sound Money? And the entire room was stumped, and I was like, oh, Silver Circle. I was like, I was in that. I mean, we were extras. Like we had things and we were running around a park in Manchester where it was an animated movie, but they were using humans for parts of it. We were all running through the park. It was very intense. I'm also a lawyer by trade. I'm a lawyer. I practiced on 2 continents, South Africa, where I'm originally from, and then in Silicon Valley. I actually worked for Fortune 500 companies in-house, doing a lot of the IP and tech deals. So I'd say that's sort of how my brain works, is I can translate from nerd to human. I'm not saying we're not human. I'm just saying, sometimes we're a little esoteric and you gotta bring it down to other people's levels. I cannot see my notes. I thank you for mentioning my book. I am the author of 1 book, but also featured in several other books, including Growing Liberty, which will be available. The author is back there. He will be doing a talk today at 4 p.m. up in the Liberty 101 room. Jason Sorens, our founder, did the foreword. I did the epilogue. It is it's sort of a mashup of AI and interviews to really try and encourage people to understand what it takes to come help grow liberty in New Hampshire, and then sort of a little bit about what is the roadmap, where are we going. My book is available for sale, The Ecstatic Pessimist, Stories of Hope Mostly. It's $20, and I would appreciate it if everyone who hasn't moved buys my book, because everyone who has moved has. I just became qualified as a real estate agent, and so I am currently pivoting from the vision part, right, telling people this is what we're trying to build, and I've been doing that with many, many great people for a long time, and now I want to be like, oh, okay, I did the big picture for a long time, now I want to do, how do I bring the individuals, how do I bring the real people, because I've been like, hey, this is what we're doing, and now I kind of want to see the other side of that. I'm also very interested in blockchain and crypto and DAOs and all of that kind of stuff. So up at the PRE hub, which is called the OWN Hub, it's RV74, we'll be having a slew of talks starting next Wednesday, as in tomorrow, Wednesday, at noon. We'll be talking about investing, we'll be talking about short-term rentals, Airbnbs, all of that kind of stuff. But what I want to leave you with as a notion is every libertarian in the world should own a piece of New Hampshire. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I'm gonna figure out how to do it with tokenization. We're gonna do DAOs, we're gonna create something where people can invest, maybe at a $5,000 or a $10,000 level, so you're not giving your world savings to us, but that way where everyone starts to feel really invested in what we're doing. Another thing I actually learned from politics, it's strange to me I'm using so many political examples, because usually I'm like, that world is pretty rotten, but I am running for office, and please do donate to my race, oh, I forget what I was gonna say. Sorry, all right, we'll go somewhere else. This is gonna happen a bit, it's just my brain skipping a little. So, in addition to running for office, I also, and this is probably my thing I'm the proudest of that people don't really know, or maybe it's too old now or whatever, but back in 2010 I was arrested. I got charged with wiretapping. That carried a 7-year felony charge at the time. They dropped their charges against me, and I was just mad enough where I was like, I'm gonna sue your asses. And I sued their asses. It took me 4 years. They kept appealing. It went all the way to the US First Circuit, which is the court right under the Supreme Court, and I won. So in the First Circuit, which applies to 13 million people, it is legal to film your police officers and public officials in the execution of their public duties. If you are in a situation that seems dangerous, please don't get between a police officer and whatever's going on. We don't want to be the assholes. We actually want to be the people who are witnessing and creating a record so that people are not confused about what happened, so that people can use their own brains to figure out what went down. So, of course, police officers have also started wearing body cams, but as we know, in every situation where we eke out a little liberty, they will figure out a way to just shaft you again. So even here in New Hampshire, where we have lots of activists working on right-to-know cases and open government, and that is really something, and I'm just going to say it now before I forget. One of the futuristic things I would love to see us do is actually to build America's first open government. And by that I mean we start to take every single right-to-know request that is completed. So right-to-know request in New Hampshire is similar to a FOIA, so your Freedom of Information Act. In New Hampshire, the bill that it applies is RSA 91A, and it basically says, hey, government's supposed to be, the Constitution actually says, hey, government's supposed to be open, transparent, accessible, and accountable to the people. And if you haven't read the New Hampshire Constitution, please do so and see if you can become, if you're one of those nerds who's into that kind of stuff, either the law or constitutional, go read it. It's an amazing, amazing document. It also includes the right of revolution, which is very handy for some of us. But with the 91A, what I'm hoping we can do is, as municipalities start to respond to requests, I want to create a culture where, and a network where people then submit that to what we could call like a New Hampshire wiki or something, right? Where we just start to take all open government requests, we put them into a searchable database, and over time we just actually make government open and accessible and searchable. And here's the little magic trick. So 2 years ago or 4 years ago, we actually passed a New Hampshire constitutional amendment, and many states have referendum processes or things you can do more with direct democracy. Here in New Hampshire, we don't have that, and I actually think that's probably a good thing. So we set the bar really high. If you want to do something radical, like, I don't know, secede, or, then you actually have to get buy-in from everyone who lives here. And so 2 years ago, we passed, it's Article 2B, and it's the right to privacy. And it's very broad, and so I think what's going to happen is if we figure out a way to do this open database, and then we start to use 2B from the Constitution, which basically says you have an inherent right to privacy and that the government shouldn't be collecting all this information on us. So I think there's a way we can do open government while also making citizens or residents of New Hampshire concerned about what information's being collected by them, so that you would automatically have this sort of vetting process where the citizens are pushing back by saying, hey, I don't want that to be in that searchable database. And then it's like, well, if my position, it's out there, and I think it's the principled position, is anything that's redacted should probably not be collected. I mean, it's like, that's how I would look at it, but that might be a little extreme. But anyway, so I think there's some magic that we can do with just, say, open government records in New Hampshire. So the other thing I've been doing since I moved here to New Hampshire is fixing myself, I guess, for lack of a better way to explain it. So, believe it or not, we are not the easiest people. Everyone here has heard the statement by now, which is, libertarians, it's like herding cats, right? And over the years, I'm pretty sure at some stage on a stage at PorcFest, I was like, it's like herding cats, but I want to put them all in the pillowcase and drown them by the river. That's imaginary and not a NAP violation. But also, we should be checking our thoughts, right? So one of the things I actually had to teach myself over the years is, even though I instinctively love to say very hyperbolic, crazy things like, oh, I'm feeling stabby, which is awesome when you have this hair and, your mascot's a porcupine. But you also, it's like, oh, actually, why am I saying that? Why am I inviting that energy into my life? What can we... what can I do differently? So we're going to go on another side tangent here, and then we'll try and figure out where I was. I recently did a show with, there's a doctor, and I'm not allowed to say his name. You guys fill in the blanks, And on the show, there were 5 guests, and we were talking about independence and secession. And everyone else got like a named slide, and I was the 3rd guest up. They keep adding a guest. There was a live audience. And my slide said, a woman from New Hampshire. And that irked me, so my ego got engaged, which I think was the point. But the producer had said to me before the time, don't hold back and no one-word answers. And when I got up there, many things happened. First of all, people who know me know I've been a very, very nervous public person. In fact, so nervous that I became an alcoholic to try and deal with it, right? But then the more I drank, the more anxious I became. And then at some stage I was like, holy shit, am I self-medicating with the thing that is making me sick? Because that doesn't seem smart, right? And so back in 2017, I did the work, I read the books. There's a great book called This Naked Mind, and it's very science-based. And, many of us need that kind of stuff to be persuaded. I can do the woo thing, but we all want to see the data. And the reality is, whether you want to hear it or not, alcohol is a neurotoxin that is bad for your brain. It is a depressant. So if you're medicating with alcohol because you think you're depressed or anxious, you're making a gross mistake. Please stop doing that. That is the definition of insanity. So we're on the show, and because I was so nervous, and because I took my crutch away, I realized, oh, fuck, I'm gonna have to learn new coping techniques, right? People think I'm very outgoing. That's not true. I'm actually introverted. I can turn it on when I need to, because also, science says we do need social interactions, and we can't just actually spend all our time online pretend fighting, whatever that energy is. And so I knew in the moment I was on that stage, I realized, wow, all the work I've done from 2017 when I was like, I'm gonna stop drinking and I have to figure out how to stop being so nervous. In that moment, I was like, so how I did that is I set a plan. I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to do a fair amount of public speaking. The more you do something, the better you become. Practice makes perfect. We don't want perfect. What do we want? Your best. Yes. So I started a cable access show with a friend of mine, and I started my own podcast. I tried to more actively go on to guest slots with people I felt comfortable with so that you can be yourself, right? So, part of life is constantly figuring out how we're growing, how we're evolving, what is actually important to us, what is not, all of those things. And on that stage, I had a realization where I was like, wow, I practiced for this moment. I wasn't nervous. The person whose name I can't say's hands are so soft. That hand has not touched a doorknob in 20 years. That was my first thought. And then as I sat down and I was like, oh, when I saw a woman from New Hampshire, I was like, oh, they're gonna try and gotcha me. And I was like, I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm gonna try and dominate. And so I knew, amongst other things, that they were going to bring up civil war, right? Because that is one of the conversations you hear around independence. And for what it's worth, not all free staters are secessionists. Some of us are, some of us aren't. Not all free staters are anything other than, I truly hope, proponents of the non-aggression principle. And that doesn't mean we're pacifists. That means that we don't aggress until aggressed against. That also means, in my opinion, and many people disagree with me, I don't like the model where you get to say, well, preemptive threats are out there, right? It's got to be a very immediate situation. We like to talk about violence in the abstract, but violence is honestly only something that should be engaged in it's, what is personal? Violence in the moment, right? All right. So I knew there were going to be civil war. So I sat down and I actually, whatever his first or second question was, and I was like, well, everyone here is going to bring up civil war. I was like, why can't it just be an amicable divorce where, I don't know, maybe we share the kids over Christmas? And that got a laugh line, and people enjoyed that. So the woman sitting next to me, she looked over and she goes, that's so idealistic. The fact that please don't murder me is idealistic. And I hope they got a close-up of my face, because I'm pretty sure it was and I was like, yes, I was just very yes. I mean, you could say it's idealistic to be like, yo, please don't murder me, but it shouldn't be. For those of you who are new, last year when we had RFK speak, I I asked him questions, and I actually did ask him about secession. It was super awkward. First of all, it was in this room, but there were probably like 300 more people. It was closed because, he wanted a gun-free zone. So we gave him what he wanted because he was our guest, and also, two of his family members have been assassinated. It sounds like a more rational position than just anyone who's, fly-by-night anti-2A. I think, he had some legitimate reasons to ask for it. But in true libertarian style, there was a Suns Out, Guns Out parade, and, guns, like literally right there where that lady, where the picnic tables are. So we had a gun-free zone, guns, okay. So I asked him about independence, and I was there at that mic, and I go, I'd like to ask you about secession. And he goes, what? And I'm like, secession. He's like, what? And I knew. So for me, at least in that moment, the question, I was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Remember, anxious, nervous, this huge moment. It's like my moment. It's like my issue, and he's just not hearing me. So I'm like a crazy lady, like, secession, And he's like, oh. And so the reason I wanted to ask him that is, will you, if you are president of the United States, or if you are in a position of authority, you and you and you, will you murder me because we have different ideas? And that is the quintessential question of life, is what are you willing to protect? And in the end, what you have to be willing to protect is yourself, right? So that notion of self-ownership, which I think means slightly different things for different people. I think you can come at it from a non-religious perspective. I think you can come at it from a God perspective. For me, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a child voice inside me that because of getting rid of all the addictions, I can hear it again, and it's not the mean voices. It's like the one that's like, when you go, oh, I don't want to do that, and then you're like, and then I would force myself to do many, many things I don't want to do. And then I was like, what if I listen to the voice that says, if you don't want to do that, just don't do it? That's interesting. I mean, I'm not saying don't be like, I'm never going to work again. I'm going to become a bum and be homeless. We want the opposite of that, right? We want to be trending towards what makes you a better you. So I'm developing a new theory that no one's going to like. So let's try it out. I'm like, is libertarianism a limiting belief? Have we created a paradigm where what we do is we make fun of other people and say, stop being a victim? But our entire philosophy is based on a power structure where we make ourselves subservient and then just complain about the boss. And I'm like, what is that? And I will explain to you how and why I realized that. I got suspended, technically banned for a while. I was still being charged. Elon, I got beef. And I got suspended from Twitter, from X, for 6 months. No one really knows why, but it was right after PorcFest last year. And based on the Twitter spaces I've sat in on and listened to, I think they just added one more hashtag behind the scenes. So they can ban hashtags, they can add flags for certain words to your profile. That's the behind the scenes shadow banning and censoring. And some of those are literally, this blew my mind. In 2019, X, then at the time Twitter, started suppressing the hashtag Trump 2024. In 2019 also, Adam Schiff banned all the anti-vax documentaries off all the streaming platforms. I find the timing very interesting, but that's a separate conversation. So Where was I? Someone? What? Twitter. Oh, banned off Twitter. So why I noticed it was I was so far removed from the echo chambers that when I went back, I was like, wow, this is just propaganda, man. And I would meet people all over the country, and they would tell me the same 6 things, whatever was that thing that was in the news. Like one example was the grandma who got trampled in Canada during a COVID protest with the horse. And that was seen worldwide. And yes, one grandmother got trampled by a horse during COVID protests. That's really terrible. But when the entire world, and they should be mad about that, but when you like put it on such a level where it's like, it just seemed very out of balance, I suppose. And then I started, because I'm doing the real estate stuff, I started talking to lots of the younger new movers. And I'd ask them, hey, when do you want to buy? Do you want to invest in the Dow? We're going to do the way of the Dow, all of that. And so many of them would say the following back to me. They would say, well, you don't really own your own house. You're just renting from the government. And I thought, wow. So I have a person here whose entire life philosophy stems from property rights, which is why I like to talk about self-ownership. I think we have property rights in different ways, right? Like you have real property, literal, you have your own physical property, whatever's in your house, whatever, you have your own corpus. And I was like, wow, like how do you hold 2 such unaligned ideas in your head? How do you hold my entire life philosophy stems around property rights, but then also go, well, I'm a victim to the government and this is a bad system and therefore I'm not even going to try or get in the game or whatever. Now, I will tell you, based on what I understand from my reading of history, buying real estate is probably one of the most I'm not going to say guaranteed, but it's better than most ways to build wealth. So if you're literally moving to a state for a philosophy that believes in property rights, but then you're also telling yourself property rights don't matter because government bad, I think we need to talk. We should be striving to align our thoughts and our deeds. At all times, we should be trying to be like, get rid of the mean voices in the head, right? And then start listening to the good voices. And then, God, I hope you guys also hear voices. Otherwise, this is the weirdest speech ever. You guys do also hear voices, right? Okay. We have to be aligned between our thoughts and our deeds. And the more aligned we become, the healthier we become. And so this is where it gets into habits. So you can have good habits and you can have bad habits. And the beauty of a habit is it starts to make things automatic, right? So it's like it frees up brain space for other things to be done, to be more creative, to go make more money, to do whatever, right? So you want to be ritually and habitually creating good habits. What I realized as I went on this journey to health was all life is your time. And all you actually have is your attention. And your attention is, where is your mind focused? And so all of us here should be really reflecting on where is your mind focused. And if your mind is focused on holding things like, I'm a victim and I'll never own real estate because the system's bad with whatever, it's not going to work. You need to align those ideas so that you can be authentically and holistically happier, because this is what happens. And with the Free State Project, the gift of the Free State Project is it will give you a purpose-driven life. Because here's the thing, if you're going to move, you're deciding there are not that many things in life that we actually decide. Like you kind of decide your life partner or where you're going to live. Many people never move from where they were born. Some people, so you could, you're choosing to come here. So you're setting an intention. And if you're setting that intention, then you have this opportunity to really start to hone and tune what you want it to look like. Where do you want to live? Ask the questions, right? All of those things. But you're setting an intention to have a purpose-driven life because you are choosing voluntarily to come do this thing. And where and how much you get involved is up to each and every person. But the magic, the one thing where it's like, oh, please check that box, is, of course, move to New Hampshire. And if you're not going to move, please choose to invest. That was the circle I forgot. So with the voting of the Democrat plan, no, it went again. Okay, obviously I don't want to tell that story. I don't even know. All right, so with time and attention being your only focus, then I want everyone here to honestly, you don't have to tell me, we don't have to yell it out loud or whatever. Maybe when you're taking a quiet moment next, really think about how do I spend my time? And don't lie to yourself. If you're watching TV or playing video games or, whatever it is, I saw that smile back there. We all have time that we are wasting that could be better done on something else. And that something else is you, right? As libertarians or as anarchists or as freedom-loving people, you should be your number one project. And so when you look at your habits, good habits or bad habits generally are addictions. It's stuff you're spending your time on that does not serve you, whether that's drinking or gaming or porn or social media. Whatever is giving you those dopamine hits that you're chasing, you have to teach yourself and rewire yourself to get those things in different ways. I read a book, Digital Minimalism, and highly recommend, right? Our screen time is destroying us, and it is creating that unalignment that we are seeing, and I think we can do better. The words healthy self are really heal yourself, heal thyself. And so if you're kind of feeling fearful, anxious, all of that fear is being manufactured. Someone is spending billions, at least, of dollars, right, trying to influence our attention and trying to steal your attention, which is stealing your mind, which is not serving yourself. And you can't be your best self if you're not serving yourself. Selfishness gets a bad rap, but if we actually internalized selfishness in the healthy way, where you then embody, and I mean that in the literal sense of the word, where you embody what you are, then we start to become the lights that people find undeniable because they can see it. And it's contagious because people recognize that it's not just a story or a narrative or perception, which is the game of the statists. They will rot your brain with nonsense and distraction. And instead, if we focus on ourselves, you make yourself your first project, and then as you embody what you are, you draw the other people to you, and we build our greater and better network. All right, I got a 10-minute warning. Do we want to talk about manufactured fear? So, Let's see. Yeah, I know. I mean, we all see what's happening here. We're just rolling with the punches at this stage. So I know for me, part of my deprogramming, I think to some extent, is part of what happened when I moved here, was deprogramming from being a people pleaser, which is almost the opposite of like becoming selfish. And I don't think selfishness means you don't care about other people. It means you care so much about other people that you understand the best thing you can do for society is to be you, free and clear, and not a burden on anyone else. That's also what happens when you become self-actualized and self-realized, is you don't have to rely on or ask for because you are generating it within yourself. So, you know, when you're doing that reflecting, what am I spending my time on? What might I want to change in myself? These are the tools that will start to push you on this roadmap. But ultimately, you can reflect as much as you want. You gotta do it, right? And that's that issue of embodiment. That's why I really like that word, because it is you then choosing your destiny and your future. So I'm going to talk just briefly about what a couple of other things are that I would love to see us sort of start to create in New Hampshire. You know, we're big enough now where we have a lot of competing ideas. I think that's wonderful. We have, is that a 2-minute warning? Oh, okay. I was like, shit, those 8 minutes went fast. So for the future of New Hampshire, you know, I think for me, sort of the stretch goal is an independent country because, you know, why not, okay? But also that is a very understandable anchor to move the needle. Nullification of federal programs we don't like, nullification of federal departments we don't like, right? As we get more and more political clout, there's a lot of interesting things we can do. I'm interested in figuring out the alternatives that would create consent-based governance, right? And I think that's where the blockchain and that kind of stuff's going to come in. I'm sure people here are familiar with things like free cities. They're looking at that from like sort of a corporate perspective. I think maybe over the next few years, we'll start to see maybe contracts starting, not only just for the real estate and the Dow and that kind of stuff, but to be like, oh, how can we, you know, govern this portion for free staters, and it's all voluntary, so people will start to say, oh, I like this one, I don't like this one. I think where there's a hole or an area, oh, Jesus, fucking hell. Do you guys think that's a military bee drone? All right, what was I saying? Well, I was saying fucking hell, but before that. Blockchain, consent-based. I already mentioned the Open Government Database. Oh, this is the one. Conflict resolution. So we haven't done a good job of that, in my personal opinion, within the Free State yet, right? Because we were growing, so you had all your growing pains. Now we're large enough where we actually are going to have to start to figure out how do we have those conversations, right? Where we disagree, but we are not going to kill each other because we've decided that's like not the way we want to roll. And so I think if there are people who are interested in mediation, conflict resolution, arbitration, you know, nonviolent communication, all of those things, you know, come find me, let's start talking about those kinds of things. But I think that, you know, we are going to have to not formalize in the sense that it's a contract. I mean, it could be a contract between two parties. But I think that we really do need to to start to look at all of that. So we probably have a few minutes. I don't know if anyone has questions from this crazy talk. I'm just going to give myself a 6 out of 10 and sleep like a baby tonight. But we want the community to grow. We want people to come who want to come build. The way I look at it is I'm trying to secede from slavery. So it's that sort of notion of becoming that self-owned unit of myself. I think we should be trying to relax into being. I just recently read that phrase somewhere, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, right? Because the being is very close to the embodiment, right? And so that sort of notion of who am I? How am I showing up in the world? Who do I want to be? How can I aspirationally get there? All of that. And then, New Hampshire's slogan, its best motto in the world, live free or die. I like to say live free or die, but also live free and thrive. Thank you. I can look what's on the rest of the cards. Let's see what's down here. Any questions? No? Hi, question.
Yes. I'd be very interested to know what New Hampshire's like during the COVID tyranny. How good or bad was it compared to, let's say, South Dakota or Florida?
So question was, how good or bad was it during the COVID tyranny? I'd say, I'd give us a B plus maybe. I would say our community gets an A plus. Everyone just did whatever they wanted to do. We threw Pork Fest. We had 1,200 people came to Pork Fest in 2020. The executive orders that were issued by Governor Sununu, every single one of them had a dump truck you could drive, an exception that you could drive a dump truck through. So he was definitely pandering to both sides. He was like saying, oh, there's a mass. Actually, it was very local with the mask mandates and the schools. Different schools did different things. So we did okay as a state. I think we did pretty great as a community. And that is part of what makes what we're doing here so valuable, because there is safety in numbers. There is this feeling of knowing someone's got your back, and that makes you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not alone. And if you move to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, you won't be alone. Clarence?
I just wanted to say to the guy who doesn't want to move and buy land because the government will own it, tell him to come here and try to foment a nonviolent revolution.
Yes, thank you. And also, people should move, and I'm not criticizing us. I'm just trying to say, the more I look at it, I'm like, we have to align our values and our thoughts. And I do think buying into New Hampshire now, I wish everyone had bought in 15 years ago. It was cheap then. I think for what we're building, it's still cheap, but it's not as cheap as it was. And of course, the interest rates, that's the government's fault. But yeah, I think, if you're here, definitely find out about that DAO. Come sign up. It's RV74, and you can join the newsletter, and we can keep you informed. But yes, move here and come foment a peaceful revolution. Yes, sir.
Yes, just regarding nonviolent conflict resolution. A frequent Porkfest attendee, someone quite well known, is currently sitting outside across the road, excluded from Porkfest over what sounds to me like a dispute that could be resolved by perhaps arbitration with a third party or some respected person here, and rather than a sort of continuation of an awkward situation that really, you know, is a non-violent situation. It's a non-violent dispute.
Sure, and you know, yes, everyone who's not involved in a conflict always thinks we should mediate. I mean, I have no issue. It's not my beef, so I agree with you. They should totally mediate. When I was thinking about, oh, what am I not looking forward to at PorcFest? I was like, I'm probably not looking forward to like running into Kaufman because, you know, we probably have a few conversations we need to have. But that was part of the reason I was like, oh, we do need conflict resolution. And in addition to conflict resolution, what we actually need is the understanding of the art of the apology and how forgiveness works, right? Like, I think as a people, we've totally lost that, right? Like, the prevailing sense in life is never apologize. I'm like, what is that? And then 2 weeks ago, I just realized this for the first time in my entire life. I was like, oh, I roll around with righteous anger, right? Because I'm like, I'm right. And then I was like, but it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter if you're right. Sometimes you just have to accept whatever is happening. So I don't even know who's out there. It's probably Mikey would be my guess.
It is, yeah.
Yes. So it's Mikey. That was not my situation. So yes, go find, it would probably have to be a Dennis Pratt thing. But also, you know what? And I'm just going to say this because this is fucking true. So here's the question everyone should be asking themselves. Are you pretending to be an asshole or are you an asshole? Because here's the reality. I am not building a community of assholes. And so some people actually have to check themselves because there are ways that we all like to behave. And you have to ask yourself when people are pushed to their last fucking limit, whether like we have to analyze that behavior. And I'm all about if you're an asshole, not for me, thank you. If you're pretending to be an asshole, come find me and maybe we can do the work that can make you stop pretending to be an asshole and just become yourself, which shouldn't be an asshole. All right, I'm done. Thanks, guys.